Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Under Color of Law hot take on next steps. We need some new ways forward. I posted earlier on Twitter that we need new ways of thinking. And I said, never has there been a time when the need for new mediums of communication, communication, education, and advocacy is more urgent. The old ones have failed. It's time for reimagination, rededication, and ultimately renewal. So before we can talk about next steps and renewal, we do also have to look at steps that have happened, steps that have gone wrong. So it's not a time just for recrimination or being mad about things, but we need to look at, for example, what happened with the mainstream media coverage of this election. So first of all, let's get this out of the way. Polling was obviously wrong, right? Polling was saying it was going to be very close. It was not very close. But that's sort of a technical problem, but it's also a problem with how the media covers it, meaning they rely on the polls, as we've discussed. They turn it into a sports contest game with constantly looking at these polls. But there's a bigger problem, which is that what happened with the coverage of this election and the coverage of Trump and the MAGA world is what some people call sane washing, and what is really just a normalization of the behavior, normalization of hate, normalization of misogyny, making it okay for those things to be presented by somebody who wants to lead the country, the most important, powerful country in the world. So the problem with just covering that, like, oh, Trump just made fun of so-and-so, Trump's calling people animals, Trump referred to his opponent, the vice president, with a female sexist epithet, the C word, oh, he just did that. When you just cover that and you allow people to speak with hate, make fun of people, it has consequences. First of all, it of course empowers other haters to do that kind of thing. If you think back, seems like such a long time ago, but with COVID, with Trump blaming China, talking about the Kung Flu, all those things, people were hurt, people died. Asians got attacked for that. Come back from Republicans says, oh, but China wasn't open enough about COVID. So what? Just because they weren't, if they weren't, doesn't mean you use that in a racist way to further your own political agenda or to cover your butt the way Trump was covering his butt. It encourages hate and racism. So what not to do, this is looking back, media should not have conversations like, oh, the Democrats are doing dangerous rhetoric because they say Trump is being authoritarian when that can cause danger to him. He is being authoritarian. That's not a problem to call out what's actually being done. That's reporting. Just look at history. They avoid, and we, as part of what they do and what we absorb from them, is we avoid telling the truth for fear of criticism. You can also see some of that with the Justice Department, of course, and Attorney General Garland's hesitancy to look like he's being too partisan, which, in my opinion, caused really fatal delay in going after Trump with these prosecutions, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people online who will criticize me and others for saying, oh, you're Garland haters, you're a bunch of ignoramuses. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting Garland is an agent of Putin, okay? I'm not suggesting he took money under the table. I'm not even suggesting that he's a moral coward. What I'm suggesting is, let's assume it comes from a place of integrity, but his actions became misplaced. They're an outdated notion of what to do in today's world. So let's look at the federal cases, for example. Okay, my position is if you'd started them a long time ago, you wouldn't have had this problem. You could have had resolution. The public would have known what Trump was facing, maybe disqualified, who knows. But clearly, by the time it got to bringing the cases, Jack Smith being appointed, very late in the day, that window of time was really closing down. So what's going on with them right now? Well, just being reported that DOJ is moving to, quote, wind down the federal cases. What's that mean? Well, OLC, Office of Legal Counsel, has this policy that they've written about how you should not prosecute a sitting president because that would presumably cause a lot of disruption. Now, there are other countries prosecute sitting leaders all the time, so we could do that too. But here, what's happening is there's going to be a discussion inside DOJ at a very high level with Jack Smith, probably the AG and others. How are they going to resolve things before the transition of power? Because OLC says you can't continue the prosecutions, they're talking about what are they going to do. Are they going to dismiss the cases, put them on hold? And you'll see the reporting talks about this is the long-standing Justice Department policy that you can't prosecute a sitting president. Putting aside my point of view that there's no reason why you can't prosecute a sitting president for a crime they commit. Like, what if they shot someone? What are you going to do? Oh, we're not going to do anything about it because they're the president right now. Doesn't make sense. But right now, what should DOJ do? I think they continue with the cases until there is the transition of power. Trump appoints a new AG who then dismisses the cases. Now, first of all, one of the cases is already dismissed. Cannon's already done that. The other one, the January 6th one, is not dismissed. DOJ should just continue. They can, if they want, they can stay the case, but keep them alive. Don't dismiss them yourselves. Make a new Attorney General do the act blatantly in sunlight and dismiss it, because that will make it clear what's being done. Mainstream media failed to educate the American public, failed to educate us themselves, because they were too happy to stay in their comfort zones. Their established way of thinking needs to change. Their comfort zone here being, it's a horse race. Let's cover it that way. Trump said this. How does that contrast with Harris's policies? I'm not saying there's no place for that. I'm not saying never watch or read mainstream media. I'm saying we need alternatives where the platform, the people, the contributors are unafraid of the truth, unafraid of making judgments, and encourage mainstream media to change how they cover things. Maybe they need better distinctions between editorial and reporting, rather conflating them at times. But we need to be able to support and engage with each other in mediums like this one, hold each other accountable, challenge the ideas we have for ourselves and each other's ideas. We can't be so afraid to challenge and let Americans not understand the difference between challenging and confrontation. Or as Trump and the MAGA world would have it, name-calling that substitutes for having intellectual discussions. So let's talk here and in other places, some already that exist, maybe Twitter, if you're still there, or new places we've yet to join or create or invent, platforms yet to be invented. Let's challenge and fight in ways already established, like working through our congressional representatives, our state, our local representatives, supporting legal challenges to policies, to cases, to illegal acts, and finding new ways to resist fascism, greed. Let's talk and exchange facts about history and what it can teach us so we can challenge and educate others. President Biden said this election was a moment of inflection, and I think he got that right. We'll put aside my opinion as to whether he would have been able to win Pennsylvania or not. It is a moment of inflection, but it took decades for the GOP to get to this moment. If you just look at the federal court set up right now that's so heavily MAGA controlled, it took a long time, decades, for them to work on that. If we look historically, there have been big political changes like this, upsets before, and we need to notice them historically, not just here, but globally. We need to understand that there's nothing special about our country in terms of what are the bad things that can happen to it. Inflection, an inflection point, it just means a moment of change in direction, change in the curve. It doesn't tell you what direction is the new direction. That's up to us to create that new direction, and it starts right here with each other, brainstorming, sometimes venting, collaborating, but always challenging and resisting what is often an old, evil, and dark nature. So I'll be here talking with you about it. I want to hear from you, and we'll be discussing what makes up our laws, our country, and what we do under the color of law. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.